Welcome to Right on Track, a songwriting podcast. Thanks to Tone for tuning in. I'm Demi Michelle Schwartz, and I'm thrilled you're joining me on my songwriting journey. So kick back and relax, don't fall flat, and remember, stay right on track. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Right on Track. I am so excited because joining me today is Kelley Swindall. Hey Kelley.
Hey Demi, how are you?
I'm great, how are you?
Amazing. Very happy to be here.
I'm so excited you're here. We are going to be talking all about sending strong messages and inspiring change through our songwriting, and I'm very excited to get into this. But before we do that, can you share with the listeners a little about yourself?
Sure. I'm Kelley Swindall. I'm from Stone Mountain, Georgia, originally. That's where I was. I was born in Atlanta, raised in Stone Mountain. So I'm from the South, and I grew up, listening to country music. And I didn't get into music till later in life, though. I moved to New York City out of high school to be an actress and study theater, which I did. And along the way, I found music and made a total 180 pivot. I guess not a total 180 because it's still the arts. It's still, performative. But that was in my, early 20s. And I've been doing it ever since. I still live in New York City. And I have my sights set on the UK. I've been there twice in the last, 8 months or so. And I'm heading back for a big tour in a week. And I have a single coming out. So I am promoting that single. It's from my debut studio album that I put out. It's the bonus track. And yeah, that's a very short long of it of what's happening right now in my life. It's country, folk, blues, Americana is the genre. I feel it's very all encompassing of all these styles of American music that are kind of all very similar, but have their own little way of being expressed. And that's what's up.
I am so jealous you're going to the UK again. Please give everybody a hug and say it's from me.
I will. Every single person. This is from Demi. They'll be like, wonderful.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I just have one question for you before we dive in. So I think it's really interesting how you got into acting first and then music. Do you see any kind of things that came from your acting that you brought into your music? Do you see any parallels, or are they, too separate for you?
No, they're totally the same. And I still it's not like I said, never will I act again. Like there wasn't any break like that. It just happened. So it's like I got in more into music, and the more time I realized it was going to require for me, if I wanted to, really get good at songwriting and really learn to sing better and have my performance down, I had to focus more on music. So acting just kind of started to slip away, if that makes sense. So that being said, it's not the same thing, but it's very, very similar because, well, of course, there's the performative element, the live performative element, which is why I was always drawn to theater. Being in a room on a stage, communicating a story, connecting with an audience. And then especially with my songs and I believe especially classic country music, which is a big influence for me, and are their story songs. So, there's absolutely a narrative there, and I'm absolutely telling a story and bringing, the person listening on a journey, which is what, a play is too. So, and then there's the performative element because, if you need to be invested in what you don't have to be, but I think if it's much more engaging and edifying and compelling for an audience to be watching a performer that is invested in what they're standing up there, singing to you about or talking about. You can listen to a beautiful song, but if there's no emotion behind it, it's just not going to connect on the same level. So I definitely think that having that background in theater was super important, and it wasn't necessarily something I had to even think about at that point, like, oh, make sure you connect with what you're saying. It was just naturally happening. So I think it's just so many parallels, and it was just the perfect next step for me.
That is so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think this kind of leads right into what we're going to be diving into today, because I feel like whether somebody is listening to a song or watching a play, songs and plays and musical theater and all that, they have the potential to move somebody, make them question things, inspire change. And I love how you brought up how if you're committed and you're invested in what you're doing, then that emotion comes across more and you can inspire that change and make people think. And that's a perfect transition into what we're going to be talking about. So can you kick things off with a great quote by Madeleine K. Albright?
1000%. It took me quite a long time to develop a voice, and now that I have it, I am not going to be silent.
So powerful. What does this mean to you?
So powerful. Well, I actually the reason I chose it is because it in a very literal way of like literally, and I mean that in a literal sense, not the figurative sense like everyone uses it. In a literal way, I had to find my voice when I started singing because and that was the big thing. It's so funny. It was so counterintuitive to everything in my brain because I was not a singer. I was not an actor who sang. I didn't sing at all. It was something that terrified me. It's something I had a desire, like in my heart, it would have been like, oh, I'd love to sing, or that would be beautiful. And when I was little, I would sing all the time, just, around, not in front of, just to myself and to my parents and like, listen, I just loved singing. It made me feel good. But then as I got older, I don't know, I just became self-conscious. And then I feel like at some point, not I feel like, definitely at some point in like middle school, I think I was just like singing along to the radio and like some bitchy girl was like, that sounds bad. And I was like,
Oh my
oh.
God.
And then so then I just never sang again. Like I mean, like
Oh
when
my
you're in that
God.
formative period, like middle school, and everything is just
Yeah.
like everything's on just high alert. Like, oh my God, I want to be cool. I want to look good. I want to do this. Like, I got to be right. Um, and then to hear that, I was just like, that was just like, boop, never again. Never will I
Oh
sing.
my God.
And forever, I was just like traumatized. I was just like, nope, it's just not something I do. I can act. I can do ballet. I can do all these other things, but nope, not going to sing. So to move forward to the point of the quote. So when I did start writing songs, because that was the first thing I was like, I want to write songs, and I was like, well, I want to sing these songs. So that's when I started singing, and I really started kind of talk singing at first, kind of like a Johnny Cash type of thing. I mean, he sings too, but I really, was doing that because I was kind of nervous. I didn't trust my voice at all. But what I wanted to say and communicate was more powerful. So that's what kept me going. It was otherwise I just wouldn't have done it. And through the years, I just got more confident. I started, and when people compliment me, I'd be like, "Oh, you have a pretty voice." I think in my head, like, "Interesting. That's not what I was told." So, and then I think like it gave me a little more confidence to sing more, talk less, and then, you know, s- and as I at one point I was living with a voice teacher and she would, give me lessons here and there. And I just started really starting to find it. And it took years and years to be confident to sing. Like, she'd ask me to sing a cappella and I'd be like, I can't sing without music behind me. Are you kidding me? Like, that's just going to be terrible. And now I have no problem with that. Like, I've literally found my voice through the years, through hard work and just like, just being open enough and confident. It's all about being confident. Like it was always there. I just wasn't confident enough to really go for it and display it. So now that I've found it, it's like, no, absolutely. Like I am, I am not going to be silent, and that's in the literal sense. And then, of course, in the figurative sense, I do feel like I'm finding my voice as well in terms of writing and songwriting, and that's constantly developing, and I always want that to get stronger. So I really do identify with this quote. I really love it, and I'm actually going to continue to remind myself of it now. So thank you for that, to me. I had not. I don't think I had ever read that before. I don't remember hearing it before, at least. So thank you.
Yeah, of course.
It was
No.
awesome.
Yeah, I love this quote too. Well, middle school girl who bullied Kelley, if you're
Yeah,
listening, look where Kelley is now.
exactly. And honestly, she probably doesn't even remember because it wasn't like a constant thing. It was just like an offhanded comment, and I fucking
Yeah.
remembered it.
Oh
I
my
don't know if I can
gosh.
say that. Sorry,
Yeah.
but I remembered it. I still
Yeah,
remember
of
who it
course.
was and whatever.
Yeah. Those things
You-
stick with you though, but
they
I'm happy
do.
you pushed through and you found your confidence. And I love how you took both approaches, the literal approach of finding your voice and becoming a singer, and also what you're writing about. I think both of those angles definitely have a lot of weight to them. And the kind of angle I was taking to this was like, I think the whole message of you can't be silent when there's something that you feel strongly about that you want to speak about. When it comes to our songwriting, we have the power to say what we want to say and communicate that to our audience. And I think the things that we choose to write about, that communicates to our audience who we are as people and what we stand for. And I think it takes a lot to do that, especially when talking about deeper things and topics that can evoke change and make people think. And I think at the same time, once you get the courage to start opening up and speaking your mind, then there's no silence in you. Like, I feel like when I started songwriting, and I still do this, I feel like a lot of my songs were more introspective, more reflective on my life, stories, but not necessarily speaking outward and trying to inspire some kind of shift in a listener's mind. But I feel like with my second EP I'm working on right now, my album was more introspective, but my EP is definitely more direct. I'm making statements, and I think now that I've found the confidence and the way of doing that, there's no stopping that. So this quote definitely has many different angles to it for sure.
I love that. We're in the same place, I think, in terms of that journey for sure. I feel the same way with my first album. Not that it wasn't, it was direct in a lot of ways, but it all had to do with like, it all came from inside of me in the sense like it was me working through my shit. And like so it was very introspective. Even it may not have come across as introspective, but it was in terms of where it was coming from. And I feel like what I'm working on now, like you're saying, is I'm definitely more conscious of having something to say as opposed to finding what I'm going to say from the process of the song, if that makes sense. Because that's I was finding, the songs would start writing themselves. Like, what am I trying to say here? What's coming out? What am I trying to express? Like, what am I working through? You know. And now at this time, it's like I'm still working through stuff, there's somewhere I'm going from the start of the song. It's like what is everything serving what I'm wanting to say and communicate, which is a departure from the first record for sure. So I I echo your sentiments there.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. So a lot of times we hold back on speaking our minds for various reasons. For you, what was the barrier? What held you back from doing this for so long?
Got it. Honestly, I think it was a journey in the literal sense of the word. Well, not literal, but the figurative sense of the word. In terms of I mean, I had to start someplace and I couldn't just go from point A to Z. I had to go like each place, A to B, B to C, C to D. So it was like in little baby steps. First, it was about like, can I even write a song? Then it was about, all right, I finished a song, I can do that. Then it was like, all right, now like my songs, like, can I make them more cohesive? Like whatever's coming out, like I never from where I came from, because I'm sure I know every single person's different. Where I came from, I would just always sit down when I had an urge to write because it was something that was going on in my personal life, like in terms of like relationships. Like I'm really sensitive. I think most songwriters are. It was really, dating in New York when I was in my 20s. That's the whole album is all about that. You wouldn't notice that when you hear it, like, but it's. I mean, that's all those songs were coming. That was the impetus of my first song. Was I had my heart broken, and it was just so much. I just had to like figure out a way to process it and to process it and figure out how I was feeling, and rather than just all these emotions inside of me, when you can actually sit down and put it into words and in a story. And especially with music, because music has there's a whole other layer when you add music in, because music itself can evoke strong emotions from a person, and you can go through a journey just with music before you even add lyrics. So I mean, it started with just that. I first had to find out what I was feeling, and writing songs helped me crystallize into words what it was I was feeling on the inside, because I was never good about expressing how I felt. I always held in my emotions growing up. Um, that's a whole nother conversation for my therapist. But I didn't. I thought it was like, I had to be tough, and I didn't want to like cry in front of people, and I didn't want to say I was angry, and like, just like I think a lot of it had to do with my upbringing. I was raised very like I said, in Georgia, but we were very fundamentalist, Christian, evangelical, and there was a big thing about, you just needed to be nice all the time. Kind, I would say now is better than nice, but it was always just like, well, that's not nice. That's not nice. And a woman shouldn't speak like that. And don't say that. And so it was just always like this way I was supposed to behave. So I just was always suppressing how I really felt in a lot of ways about things. And it just became a part of, I didn't realize this consciously. It wasn't until I started, I think that's why I realized, that's why I started writing songs. Like I just couldn't keep it in any longer. I didn't, if someone I was dating upset me, or if I would, my heart had been broken, normally I would just keep it inside and not say anything. And then once the dam broke and I started writing songs, it was like, oh my God, this is how I'm feeling about this. And like, this is what I really want to do about this situation. And like, I'm really angry about this. I'm going to write about this. And then I started actually understanding how I really felt instead of just like suppressing it all and letting it turn into depression. And so first I had to find out how I felt. And then once I got a grip on that, and it's a constant, we're always going to have to be dealing with that. That doesn't go away. I always have to process my emotions. Wait, I'm feeling this. What does this actually mean? Why am I, what, but I have a better grasp on it now because I've learned how to express that through song. So now that I can do that, like, I feel like there got to a point where I was, it was natural in the evolution to then go, okay, this feels a little indulgent, like not negatively so, because it can be a negative word, but like I was like, I need, I feel like all my songs are about me. I mean, like they may be another character, like I'm writing from a character, but like it's all coming from uh relationship oriented. And I was like, all right, I want to go farther than this now. Like I want to go beyond this. Like what are some things that could actually, and not that it didn't help people, because I always would have women coming up to me and being like, "Oh my god," men usually wouldn't get it. They'd think some of the songs were funny or something, but like women would come up to me and be like, "Oh my god, I feel you on that." Like, or like, you, that is my story. And I'm like, "Yeah, awesome." So like that's good, but I wasn't intentionally trying to do that. Now I'm intentionally, being like, "All right, what do I want to say? How is this going to be edifying? Like what is my end goal here? How can I change yeah, like how can I change people's perspectives on something, or just maybe make them question, like it's more about what's going on the outside now than what's going on in my inner world, and communicating that, if that makes sense. And I had to have that journey to get there. I couldn't just go from A to Z. I had to go each little baby step.
Yeah. Okay, the majority of what you said, I felt like I was listening to myself talk.
I
No, we're
feel it.
so similar. Literally, I agree with all of that. I think another thing for me personally was like, because I wrote such, I don't know, like introspective songs, a lot about wanting to fall in love, this, that, very like sad, those kind of songs. When I started to make a shift, a reason why I think I held back a little longer from being more direct in my music was, what are people gonna think? What are people gonna think when I start releasing this music that's more self empowered and direct? I was so nervous to release my current single, You Get What You Give, because it was like completely different. It's basically talking about being in situations where you are not appreciated or taken advantage of, and people are just taking from you, and it gets to the point where you're not being appreciated and you have to say, okay, I'm done, I'm not being treated like this anymore, I deserve better. And You Get What You Give is a really strong message that I have realized over the past couple of years. And so I wanted to talk about that, and I think
I
that
love
can
that.
send a lot of message. Oh, thank you. I think like
Yeah.
that can definitely send a message to others to listen, if you're being treated this way, like make a change because you don't deserve it. And so like when I was getting to release the song, literally even the artwork, it's me basically standing in a burning forest holding a fireball. And that's
Oh
like
wow, I
polar
love it.
opposite.
Burn it down.
It was like polar opposite from my other stuff. But like I feel like I was afraid to like do that because what are people going to say when little nice to me writes a song like this? But at the same time, like like you said, it's evolution and it's growth. We can't stay stuck in the same place and write the same songs over and over again. Music is a way of expression, but it can also be used to spark thoughts and inspire change and all those things. And I feel like as songwriters, we have the responsibility to do that.
I agree with you. 1000%. Absolutely. I absolutely do. I mean, it is, and it's because, you know, entertainment is the most powerful, like whether it's movies, whether it's music, whether it is a play. I mean, unfortunately, it's just so little people see plays in, 2022. It doesn't have as wide of effect as like a hit song or a hit movie, but like that is when people that is what gets people to think differently. That is what impacts people. A book, like I really feel, as opposed to just, a politician standing up there giving a speech, or like
Right.
someone. I mean, it's just not even the same thing,
Right. No.
at all. It's like when you can get someone on like that heart story level, like they can empathize, they can see something from a different perspective because they're in those shoes, and I mean that is what, or just for the first time be like, oh my god, I've never thought about that way, and it's so important and it's so cool at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, a lot of responsibility too, for sure.
For sure. Yeah, and I think too, I think what made me really realize the musical impact myself is when I was growing up, I was all about melody and vibe and groove. Like I would listen to songs and not really think about the message or the lyrics. And once I started to really get into songwriting, when I started analyzing some of my favorite songs to see how I could become a better writer, I would sit there and read lyrics, and that's when it started to really sink in like, wow, when you strip away the production and the melody and just read this like it's poetry, it definitely has an impact. And that inspired me to think, if other artists are doing this, why can't I?
I love that, absolutely, and that's the crux of it all. I mean, if you have to, you have, I mean, you don't have to do anything, but if your lyrics can stand alone, I mean, your lyrics need to be able to stand alone. I mean, that's a great songwriter, as opposed to, just a songwriter, because if the lyrics can stand alone and then you have a great melody behind it, the production's just going to add extra for sure. But like it's and that's I want to go back to, I'm just going to insert the UK again. I feel like they really have an appreciation for sitting there and listening to the lyrics.
Yes.
And over here, people will be like, it's people will talk, and they don't think they're being disrespectful. They're not being, in their minds, they're not rude. It's just like, oh, it's just someone in a bar. They're playing music, and like, and they're gonna bop their head around to it and like listen, like they're smiling, and like turn to the person next to them and talk like they have no interest in actually listening to
Yeah.
what the hell the song's about.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh yeah, it's cool to have live music in the background. This is awesome. Like,
Yeah.
thank you. And they're like, great job, thank you. And I'm like, you aren't even listening to what
Yeah.
is being said here, and that's okay.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I completely agree. But I love how you brought up the lyrics. Like, if you can read the lyrics and they can stand alone, then that definitely is special about the song. I start with lyrics typically when I'm writing. So, like, what is your process? Do you start with lyrics or music?
It usually is together. To be honest, at least as in the beginning, it was always kind of coming together. That being said, it wouldn't just, as when I say together, it would be like I would be starting the tune and the lyrics would come at the same time, but not all of the lyrics at the same time. Like they would only take me to a point to where like then the tune would just play itself out. But I'm like, okay, that's the tune. Here are some lyrics that I have. Now I just have to keep plugging away with the lyrics. So I have the rhythm, I have like the phrasing, I know how it's gonna be. Here's like what I have in this part. Maybe they'll change, maybe not. But yeah, and then I write the lyrics from that. Then I write the rest of the lyrics from that. So I honestly, I'm trying to think if I've ever just like written the lyrics, because I know a lot of people that do that, like as a poem, or like turn poems into music, or just write the lyrics first. And that's not okay. I think there was one song, actually, there was one song where I wrote the lyrics first. And that was it was one of the ones on my album where I had just like literally just like my boyfriend at the time, who was soon to be my ex-boyfriend, had just like slammed the door and left because I just had like a really tough conversation. And then I went downstairs and I just like wrote this long, and it was to a beat, but it was not musical yet. So that would be, but usually it's going to be kind of, they're simpatico with each other, and then I have the music.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of times where I tend to do it kind of at the same time, but I like free writing a lot. So when I have an
Love
idea
that.
for a song, I will literally free write for like 10, 15 minutes and then pick through and start to pull things out. And then when I'm starting to piece lines together as lyrics, the music starts to come. But I'm just always grounded in the concept and what I'm trying to say before I actually start writing.
I like that. I like that approach.
Yeah,
Definitely gonna have to, yeah,
yeah.
think on that more. I like the idea of the free writing, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I feel like I rein myself in with just trying to stick with, it needs to fit in here. It's like, no, free write and see what more, how far you
Right.
can go on, how much more you can expand on the idea,
Mm-hmm.
and then go back and rein it in some. I like that.
Yeah. Awesome, awesome. So now let's talk about All Right, All Right. So,
Yeah.
what is the inspiration behind this song?
So there's a Milton quote, that's the I mean, well, it's a bunch of things. I mean, like, so the inspiration that one was my life, at the time, just being in New York, and from all outside perspectives, I was definitely struggling, in terms of, like in terms of being an artist, like, not really making much money, barely getting by on rent, like, eating whatever it is I could, like, like cheap stuff from the store, like ramen noodles or beans in this case in the song. But I was like but inside, like I didn't feel that way. I was like I had a goal. This is right when I was like, switched over from acting and was getting into music, but I was just really just it was more like whatever gig I could get, as many open mics as I could go to just to like get better. And but I was so full of life and positive and just loving every second of it because I just had like this mission that was like just to become like a great songwriter and to be a musical artist and so it's really about that was the inspiration. I just kind of started writing. This was like I think this is one of those songs that kind of just wrote itself. Like I wrote it, just sat down and wrote it all in one sitting. It just flowed. And it was just it was kind of stream of consciousness. The verses are all very mundane, just like me going through a day, like lots of just things happening. And then the choruses are a little bit more like existential, kind of like, I don't know how it's going to go, but I have faith despite this crazy mixed up place, it's going to be all right. And what that means, and I've actually since kind of changed it, but that this is an old recording, so it's released. So it's still the same sentiment, the new words, but basically, I just feel like the new words that I have now communicated even more strongly. But basically, what that's saying is, it's like I don't know no one really knows what's going to happen. Like with anything, we all have like these narratives in our head, but good or bad, you have I have the power to just put a positive spin on it, like feel, have hope, like keep faith that, I'm on the right path, like listen to my intuition and, feel good even when like, the world could be going to shit around me. But if, it's classic, Zen mentality, but you have you keep that peace inside, that joy inside, you're good. And that's really ultimately what the song's about.
I love it. I think that's so inspiring, such a great message, and I think that's something a lot of us need to hear right now.
For
Um,
sure.
and so,
Absolutely.
if your listeners can take one thing away from this song to either make them think deeper about something or inspire them to change their perspective on life, what would it be?
Well, so with that, I'm gonna give you a Milton quote because that was a John Milton quote. Because that's what I really feel is like sums up the song. Even if you don't necessarily hear the quote in the song, this is what the song is about, and it's the mind is its own place, and in
Oh,
itself can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven.
oh wow.
And that's what I feel like it is. It's like and I think about that a lot because it's like, wait, what's going on? Because really, at the end of the day, your reality is completely in your head. Like it's however however you have complete control. That's the only thing you have control over. Actually, it's literally the only thing we have control over is our thought processes, our mind, like how we're going to frame a situation and how we're going to choose to frame a situation and yeah. So we can either let your mind make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven and I think that's the takeaway there for
Yeah.
sure.
That's incredible. Not to get super deep into philosophy because I did not
No,
understand
it's great.
philosophy class in college. But there was one concept that I remember, and it's like everything in the world is neutral until you make the choice to see it positively or negatively. And I think that's
Absolutely.
basically the same thing. And I
It
love
is.
having a positive outlook on life and spinning things to see the silver linings, even if there don't seem to be any.
Totally, 1000%. And that's like, I'll just say one more thing. It kind of talks about in the bridge where it's like, because sometimes people will be like, oh, but things are so bad. Like, how can you see the good? Or like or like, oh, but like, what's the point in the end? And it's like, what's the point? Like, how do you want your experience of life to be? Like, it's up to you. Like,
Yeah.
if you might as well, in my opinion, like, you might as well choose to see the silver linings. Like, what's it gonna? yeah, I guess you could be, oh, but that's not realistic, it's not this. It's like, all right, well, fine, go, be miserable then, if that is that serving you. When I talk to like someone who's a bit more skeptical or cynical, I'm just like, all right, I mean, if is that really serving you? And anyway, so
Yeah.
yes, I echo your sentiments.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic, fantastic song. So I have one more question for you, and that is for any songwriters listening who might be struggling to write music with strong messages and write songs that can inspire change and make their listeners think and reflect. What advice would you give them?
First of all, I think that having having that intention is important, and just to continue like to feed that intention and just continue to to let that grow, because just because there is definitely space between the seed being planted and the seed growing. Like there's a lot of time in between, a lot of stuff that's going on. So don't be frustrated if right at first you're like, oh my god, like I want to write something meaningful, I want to have something to say, but I don't know what the hell that is. That's okay. Just having that intention and keeping that alive, I think it will eventually, and then you have to keep writing and keep writing, even if you're getting frustrated with it. I do believe that through that you will find what you want to say, and then once you get to that point, then you hone in on it. So it is about having faith in having that intention, and then having faith that as you water it with the desire, it will continue to grow, but at the same time doing the work of showing up and writing songs, even if it's not what you think it's supposed to be yet. You still have to get through that muck to get to the gold. So that's what I think, and that's just from my own personal experience.
That was absolutely beautiful. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Wow. Kelley, it was lovely having you. Can you share with everyone where they can find you on social and listen to your music?
Of course. So I'm gonna spell my name, because if people were to just write it phonetically, they wouldn't find me. So Kelley, yeah, Kelley is Kelley. So there's an EY there, and then Swindle is not, even though it's pronounced, like swindling someone. That's not how it's spelled. It's spelled Swindall. So it's spelled Swindall. So it's Kelley Swindle. And you can literally just Google that. But my website is that www.kelleyswindle.com. My Instagram is at Kelley.swindle. My Twitter is at Kelley Swindle, though honestly, I'm never on Twitter. I'm always locked out. I never can get on. I'm just like, all right, I give up on Twitter. They're always locking me out. I don't know why. So anyway, that's a tangent, but that's how y'all can find me. And I honestly, I think my website or Instagram is the best, because I post multiple times a week, and so that's up to date. And my website's pretty good about that. So,
Perfect. Well, Kelley, it was lovely having you.
oh, Demi, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Of course, of course. Listeners, thank you for listening to this episode with Kelley Swindle. And of course, until next time, stay
Stay
right
right
on
on
track.
track.